Today I'm going to go a little retro. This was my very first Nitro MT, and it had its problems. This truck's been out of production for quite some time. This one here is the third evolution or third version of the Duratrax Warhead. It came with a Super Tiger G-27 CX motor. That motor is probably the cause of many people getting into the hobbies hating Nitro MTs or buggies or whatever you want to go into, but it had its issues. I was able to get the stock motor running really well, and I'll show you how I did that. The stock motor was in this one up until the end of the summer. Finally decided to do some maintenance on it, and it was unserviceable. I did find another Super Tiger G27 CX online for a really good price and put the modifications in that motor from this motor as well as a new upgrade. So I'll go over those, how to get that stock. If you guys are still playing with these and have the stock G27 CX motor, there's ways to get them to run really well, and I'll go over what I did to mine in order to get this one running really well. It's a fun truck. This has still got some kind of the older technology in it. No sway bars or anything like that, dual shocks. But as far as rollover, it's still a very stable truck. One of the things that you want to do on this one is make sure that you drop the truck. If you want longevity, you got to drop this truck down by setting your shocks at some of the lower points for the truck to ride low, as well as your pins. These pins also have adjustability as far as where you set them. You want it low. That'll help save your dog bones, your drive lines, your diff cups, keep them from wearing out too soon. This one's just a basher for me, and so I set it as low as I can to get the stability that I want out of the truck so it doesn't roll over real easy. And the motor, we'll go over the motor here next. Okay guys, here's the original or stock engine for the Duratrax Warhead. They're a pretty good running engine if you know what to do to them. This one here I found on eBay for a really good price. You can still find them. I've done a few things to this one to help make it run better. One of them, as you can probably see, is this big cooling head. Nova used to make these for the G27 CX or CS, whatever version you have. This is the original head that comes with them. You can see that you can get quite a bit more cooling on a better head. Regardless of the head, you can still get these to run fairly decent. One of the things I like to do, especially with cast cases and that kind of stuff, is make sure before you ever put a drop of nitro fuel through these things is to pull these motors apart and check your sleeve, your piston, your case for any kind of manufacturer issues or dirt or anything that may be in there, rough edges, that kind of stuff. With this one, because it is a kind of a cast block, I do find some issues with these on the last few of these I've had. The good thing about these motors is you can usually get them for pretty cheap if you just want to run them. I run 3 shims in these. For you guys that are popping glow plugs and breaking pull start ropes or whatever you're doing, that feeling a high compression, you want to add a head shim or 2. This one I'm running 3 0.2 millimeter head shims. I found that to be the best fit for this particular motor. It runs great. I don't have any glow plug issues, and I'm not dinging up the button head at all, running 3. And so one of the things I like to do is make sure that before you even run these motors is that cylinder is freed up. There is a couple burrs I found in this case that caused this thing to be a little on the rough side as far as pulling out. I take 600 wet sandpaper and go on the inside of the case where the sleeve fits, and then I also polish the sleeve on the outside, again making sure there's no burrs or anything on any of these ports. And so that thing, even though it's still a nice snug fit, it's not catching or binding anywhere. If you don't do that before you run a nitro motor like these, what you're going to find is that once you heat these things up quite a few times, these can get kind of stuck. There's ways to get around that. You can fill the case full of oil and heat it with a heat gun or whatever you do several times until that thing will pop loose. Sometimes you'll never get it to pop loose. At least that's what I found. And so the first thing I like to do is make sure that sleeve to case fit is nice with no binding. That'll save you a lot of headache down the road if you decide to rebuild one of these. Another thing that you want to do with these, this is the CX motor, but I've put a CS crank in it. The original cranks, as you can see, are a pretty cheap manufactured crank. They're okay, but you're not going to get the performance out of the CS cranks. These are the original long shank bolts that come with the short stubby shaft or crankshaft. I don't like these, and so you can still find the better cranks out there if you still have one of these motors running around. It's the DTX G-27 and they started building these cranks when they came out with the 835 buggy and updated this particular motor. And so if you can take a peek in there, you can see it's more of a turbo crank. You're going to get better performance with this crank. It does have the long shaft, long shank on here, and so you have to do some shimming to put this back in a Warhead or an RTX. And so for that, you want to get you a clutch bell shim kit. Offna used to make these. This is the Offna version. You can still get this exact shim kit because you're going to need these little spacers for one thing for your clutch bell. I use the small one for this particular setup, and then also the screws that hold that clutch bell in place, and you have all your shims that you need to properly space that clutch bell on the long shaft motors. Hobao Racing is now making this kit. They're about the same price, $5. Get these while they're still around. If Hobao goes under, you're probably not going to be able to get these shim kits anymore. So it's cheap, and these things are really handy for whatever clutch bell shimming you need to do. I've used them on my helicopters for shimming my helicopter clutch bells at times, and so if you got other stuff hanging around, use those. The shim kit, the head shim kit, the gasket set, you can still find these as well on eBay if you're still running one of these motors. Again, run 3 shims in there. These are, like I said, 0.2 millimeter, and I've got 3 of them in there, so I've got a 0.6 millimeter stack in there. It makes this motor run very well. The last thing, well, not the last thing, second to the last thing I've done is put a solid back plate on this motor. Get rid of that super start stuff that these things came with. Don't put a pull start on it. Just get you a solid back plate. You can still, again, find these over on eBay or some of the other stores and just use a bump start. That's going to save you a lot of headaches as far as these engines overheating or leaning out and that kind of stuff. Last thing I did to make this engine perform better is I drilled this carburetor out. You can do that if you're careful, or find somebody that will do that for you, to 7.5 millimeter. And so I've got a 7.5 millimeter bore in there now, just a little bigger, slightly bigger than stock bore, and that really helps the performance on these motors. And so if you still got one of these laying around, you want to get it running right, you want to get it running consistent and better. If you do these simple mods, you're going to have to put a little money into it, but if your engine's still in new condition, you can get these things to perform really well, and you're not going to pay a lot of money to do it. And so that's my suggestions if you guys are still running some of these. Anyways, I hope that helps someone out there. Oh, and make sure that anytime you tighten a carb down, before you tighten that carb screw, put pressure on that carb until you can see the carb gasket, the carb O-ring squish. Then tighten that nut. Don't over tighten it. Get it snug, and then maybe an 1/8 or 1/4 turn, because you don't want to warp your carb barrel, and that'll seal that carb on the case body, so you're not going to have any leaks. Other guys, you know, will take this valve off and silicone each little gasket, and I've never really found the need to do that, as long as you're running a solid backplate. Got a proper head shim kit in there, everything's going to work good for you. And so that's it for this video. Hopefully it helps some of you guys out. Thanks for watching.